Milani, also known as the Everbloom, is one of a dozens of minor deities that can be found across Galarian. Milani is the patron saint of all those who fight against oppression and the rules of the unjust, dating back to the days when Eridan roamed the world. Milani is most commonly depicted as a pale-skinned human or elf, with large white wings and hair that falls to her mid-back. She typically wears tan or brown leather armor with a pair of fur boots and wields a steel mace and a large wooden shield with her holy symbol emblazoned on it. Her holy symbol is a bright red thorned rose, growing out of a blood-soaked cobble street. It can be found in any locations that the oppressed gather and as a rallying symbol for the unjust. In artwork, she can usually be seen breaking chains, slaying demonic fiends, or leading peasants to overwhelm evil-looking knights. Milani was originally born as a half-elf over 2,000 years ago to a group of forlorn elves. She was raised to believe in elven superiority and eagerly awaited the day that the elves would return and restore true civilization to Galarian. However, when the demon Tree Raiser attacked Keonan and stole the Sovereign Stone from the city of Eldaria, Milani's beliefs were shattered. She embraced her human heritage and used her impressive skills as a ranger to begin striking back at Tree Raiser's minions. At some point, she attracted Eridan's attention, and he cast a blessing upon her and charged her with protecting isolated human settlements. As one of his champions, Milani would protect the common folk against monsters, bandits, barbarians, oppressive lords, and demon worshippers for nearly a century. She surpassed Eridan's expectations, and he rewarded her by raising her to officially be one of his saints and restored her to the prime of her youth. She spent the next several centuries crafting visions that would inspire some of Galarian's greatest mortals to take the steps that would lead them to become living legends. Upon Eridan's death, a tiny spark of divinity he had bestowed within her drew more of Eridan's fading divinity to her, until she became a fully fledged goddess. Now, Milani has attracted her own faith, but her following is still small and relatively intimate. Her religion is small enough that she is able to still take a personal interest in the lives of her many followers, and she even has a personal relationship with some of her more devout followers. She loves to offer advice tinted with jokes and regularly checks up on her followers. She believes any tool can become a weapon when suitably motivated, from a simple scythe that can cut through one's bindings to the printing press that can print books subverting a tyrant's reputation. She also teaches that a common purpose can rouse an individual into an even greater whole. Whether that purpose is to start a revolution, drive out an unworthy leader, or to just get through a rough spot in a marriage. Each individual must recognize and take advantage of their own strengths, acknowledge their own faults, and push past them to achieve true victory. As expected, Milani gets along with the vast majority of good-aligned gods, especially Cayden and Kalian. Both Milani and Cayden have an intense hatred for slavery and oppression, and they naturally find themselves aligned often. She is also allied with Desna, who gives her followers hope, Aristil and Torag, protectors of community, Imade, who was a fellow servant of Eridan, and Shaylin, the inspiration for perfect devotion. She's also allied with Kurgus, a sports deity who is always willing to help others in need. Milanites will always seek to continue building relations with other good gods, especially those who are already friendly with Milani. While for the most part Milani's faith has few resources, the faiths they ally with are often more than willing to provide support for Milani and her followers. These amassed resources are often the final turning point her followers need to successfully fund a rebellion or arm defenders against a rising tyrant. Milani in particular hates all forms of slavery, even debt-based or voluntary slavery, which puts her in a conflict with many wealthy countries such as Katapesh and Kadira. Milani's position as a lesser deity allows her to avoid attention and subsequent conflict from many of the evil gods, except for those where she is able to assist her followers in thwarting the plans of evil deities. Asmodeus and Zon-Kuthon are her most frequent enemies simply because she despises everything they stand for. Many Milanites know better than to show their true affiliation if they live in a region where the evil gods are strong. If they openly acknowledge their worship of Milani, they would be ostracized or outright executed. They often perform more of a covert position, and they aid the stronger churches within these regions, acting as spies or simply morale officers with larger churches. Milani has two small realms that she travels between when she's not on Galarian. A tiny realm carved out of Eridan's former realm within the city of Axis, and one that she has personally established within Elysium as a home that is more suited to her chaotic and goodly nature. Milani's garden is dominated by a maze-like fortress of beautiful rose bushes, but lined with deadly thorns. After Eridan's death, she created a defensive perimeter near the center of his collapsing realm that is now called the Refuge of the Red Rose. Any righteous adventurer can be a devout follower of Milani. Always searching for a cause that is worth their time, attention, and their sacrifices, they are known to be a little bit reckless with their own lives, but are utterly devoted to helping innocents. Half-orcs and half-elves are also popular followers of Milani because they view her worship as the ideal hero to prove themselves to human society. They hold themselves to strict ideals of sacrifice and selflessness to prove their worth. Many of Milani's divine servants are dead mortals who have been granted sainthood after a noble death. Usually, she prefers to raise rangers who are veterans of many battles. Charl, for example, appears as a sandy-haired, sturdy young man who loves to visit the material plane and share any of his experiences with the common folk. He tends to wield old hunting knives or a homemade and well-worn shortbow. He has the stats and abilities of a 6th level ranger and only asks for payment for his help in the form of small magical stones or gems. Delene the Lucky is a waifish young woman with black hair that holds a single white stripe down the front. She is a stealth expert and enjoys spending her time teaching others how to move silently and incapacitate her enemies without killing them. She has the stats and abilities of a 4th level ranger and only asks for payment in the form of scrolls, sling bullets, and magical ointments. Nyla is a hound archon, rumored to have been Milani's personal canine from life, granted sentience and an immortal life when the Everbloom became a full goddess. The Archon prefers staying in her white retriever form over her humanoid form, and will use this appearance as a way to spy on any of Milani's enemies. She loves to swim and will usually accept payment in the forms of magical food or potions. Courage Heart is the most unique and is Milani's personal herald, and follows 2 missions faithfully. To attack the powerful enemies of Milani's church, especially those who are undead, and to inspire hope among the mortals with the strength to throw down tyrants. She was once a mortal ranger, and was an early champion of Galt's Red Revolution, when it deposed several of Cheliax's evil nobles. However, as the Red Revolution became less about the righteousness and more about the chaos and vengeance, she rebelled. She fought against the Red Revolution and was eventually executed as a Chelish sympathizer by one of Galt's final blades. However, Milani plucked the woman's soul from this cursed artifact and raised her as her herald. Now, Courage Heart performs her duties under a new name to prevent her living Galtan relatives from being targeted by association. Milani's worshippers are mostly human, but she does have a fair share of half-elf and half-orc followers. Her priests are mostly clerics and rangers, peaceful followers who are not afraid to take up arms against evil when the time is right. Her followers tend to be optimistic, loving, friendly, and outgoing, but are not afraid to trade punches in response to an offense or injustice. Followers of Milani take their responsibilities seriously. They know history is full of towns and cities that have been razed to the ground by invaders, or crushed beneath the boots of a tyrant. When training others to fight, they are strictly serious. They set aside their jokes and gentle nature to really push the nature of a fight. During an uprising, the church welcomes those with skills at arms. Should individuals come into conflict with each other, the church allows the freedom to the visitors to approach problems from their own unique direction, while the priests focus on coordinating the rest of the community, with an emphasis on endangering as few innocent lives as possible. Though Milani was born a half-elf, her church avoids elven culture. Instead, her church focuses only on the human aspect of half-elves and half-orcs, and the bright hearts and stubborn will of the human race. By doing so, she manages to draw in many half-bloods who see her as a shining beacon of what someone can achieve, with or despite the prejudice against them. A typical church service will mix speeches, songs, and anecdotes about devotion and overcoming hardship. Music played within the temples are folksy and use heavy drums, simple stringed instruments, and heartful singing to inspire attendees. Many of Milani's hymns double as revolution songs, or coded messages to listeners that warn of hostile patrols, members in need of help, or rising tyrants. Milani will most often show her pleasure through imagery or scents of roses, or the appearance of stark white animals, usually doves, mice, and owls. When she's angered, usually by a betrayal, flowers will wither and sprout wicked thorns. Even minor cuts will begin to bleed excessively, and blood splatter will take on the shape of roses upon the floor. As the goddess of revolution, Milani expects all of her followers to confront oppression when it lifts its ugly head in all of its forms, to defend the common folk who are not able to, and to overcome any despair that would keep them from achieving a true victory. Her anathemas are likewise pretty clear-cut and expected. If you willingly abandon those in need, enslave or oppress others that you have power over, or harm innocents, even if it's indirectly, you will earn Milani's ire. If you're struggling with ways to please Milani, subscribe to my channel. I am constantly putting out new lore videos, and I may inspire you with new and exciting videos weekly. Milanite temples usually are shaped similar to an amphitheater, with a stage at the lowest point of the temple and seating rising towards the exit. To leave her temple, followers will descend to the stage at the lowest portion of the stage before climbing the staircase to the exit, much like a person will rise from under the thumb of a tyrant. The lowest point of the temple will be built at ground level, and beneath follower seating will be a secret crawlspace. In peacetime, this crawlspace is used to store supplies, while in times of war you would find weapons or hidden freedom fighters in this empty space. In smaller communities, a town hall may double as the Milani temple, with a small shrine or altar kept out of the way, or stashed behind a curtain when not needed. You can commonly find shrines to Milani within old Eridan temples, even the temples that have converted to Imade's worship. Even within a temple of Imade, you can commonly find a small alcove with rose iconography or a rose bush that grows wild. Commonly clerics or rangers, Milani's priests will often spend their time tending to the spiritual needs of a community or working as leather workers or other material professions. Her ranger priests act as border guards for communities where they scare off dangerous animals, hunt down angry monsters, and capture fleeing criminals. Priests will constantly plan for the long term, setting aside tools, weaponry, and money in case they need to build, smite, or buy supplies in haste. Many of her priests will be trained in heal and in history knowledge in order to remember the lessons of the past. However, During times of war, her priests will operate as strategists, scouts, spies, and militia commanders. They lend their expertise and power to their soldiers, granting them boons whenever possible. They prefer hit-and-run tactics and focus on being more mobile on the battlefield than their opponents. They rarely have enough numbers to stand up to a full army that many of their opponents are able to field. A Milanite priest feels comfortable leading others, not because he believes he deserves to, but because he knows that working together and coordinating their efforts allows them to tear down that which they could not do alone. Milani's priests understand that there is a time for negotiation and a time to pick up a blade, and sometimes you must make great sacrifices to defeat evil without compromise. Ultimately, it is her priest's duty to draw a line in the sand, to stoke and excite her followers, and to be that sword that draws first blood, to show others that their enemy is not invincible. The official book of the church is known as the Light of Hope, a book which begins with a record of Milani's mortal deeds. It also includes homilies about family, defense, hope, and perseverance, as well as a few ritual prayers and songs. In some areas, it has been split into two books, one that focuses on her personal history and another that focuses on the lessons for mortals. It is customary to use a pressed rose as a bookmark within the Light of Hope, and to mark important passages with rose petals. Formal dress calls for the clergy to wear a long white tabard with dark brown trim and a single blood red rose at its center, which is reserved for ceremonies. A priest will typically add a decoration to this trim, such as a button or a small emblem to represent those who gave their life defending another. In most locations, this tabard is passed down to further leaders, with a few churches having decorations going back to the church's origin. Adventuring priests of Milani may instead mark their tabards or cloaks to commemorate those fallen, such as allies, cohorts, or even beloved animal companions. A priest or especially devout follower who wishes to display their faith more prominently may wear a buckle or brooch with a stylized rose emblem. As Milani's followers are typically ordinary citizens, many of the faith's aphorisms are used to inspire hope and determination. Find your hidden strength. The faithful understand that sometimes you must endure hardship to reach a better place. Humanity is at its best when things are at their worst, and hope is the source of incredible power. Know what is worth more than yourself. True devotion is being willing to make sacrifices in order to protect everyone. Whether this is a spouse, a child, a home, or your own freedom, you are given the choice to sacrifice something to promote the greater good. Milanite communities primarily celebrate the anniversaries of patriotic victories that were achieved with the help of civilians. The church also observes a dedicated moment of silence on the anniversaries of the death of local heroes. However, Milani and all of her supporters refuse to celebrate All Kings' Day, for Milani hates the endless cycles of violence that has been brought by Galt's Red Revolution. Milanites will celebrate Armas Day, a leftover day from Eridan's worship that is held on the 16th of Eridan, by training commoners how to fight and defend themselves. Even-tongued Day is celebrated on the 14th of Neth, where Milanites celebrate their freedom from Imperial Taldor. Foundation Day, held on the 1st of Abydos, is commonly celebrated as the founding of Absalom, but the followers of Milani observe a moment of silence on this day in memory of Eridan. I hope you enjoyed this quick video on Milani. She was a much more interesting deity than what I was expecting when I first heard of her in the comments of my videos, so I'm glad I took the time to look into her further. I hope I see you back here next week when I post my next video. Big thank you to Drake, Havoc, and Ashera Comics for supporting me on Patreon, and Kaz for supporting me on YouTube. This week, I also want to thank Froggy, who is my newest Patreon supporter. With y'all's support, I'm able to pay for the different tools I use to do these videos, such as my editing programs, and to give back to the community with the different giveaways I want to keep doing. So thank you to everyone.